our our next topic will be disability housing. Would you say those receiving SSI are the majority compared to those on SSDI, since work credits are required for SSDI?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at supported housing, or at least income supported housing, that, you know, the SSI, I think more important, I mean, if somebody has SSDI, so Social Security Disability Income, that it is because of work history. And if you have a work history, there's a higher likelihood you either have your own home, or you have a family home, or you have some stable housing because you had income.
Right.
And with SSI, there's less income. So again, you're, you know, as you kind of allude to in the question, you're almost forced to rely more on government supportive housing options than if you're on SSDI. But definitely, there's a massive need on both of those categories of folks.
Well, I must say I consider myself very, very fortunate that I was able to pretty much start, at the beginning with SSDI. And that's only because my parents are deceased.
Yep.
Which I guess it turned out to be a silver lining in the, situation.
Yep. Yeah, not to keep suggesting future shows for you, but that would be, explaining those ins and outs, what are the differences, getting some experts in to really talk about it, because there's a lot of myths and stereotypes, and of course we discover where this part of the system doesn't know that part of the system, and they can short circuit some things because they're not working together as well as they would like. Again, people with best of intentions, but there can be some negative consequences.
Yes. So we have to inform our viewers to the
Absolutely.
best of our knowledge.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, I see. Since the Grand Rapids Housing Commission just opened their waiting list of 5,000 in June, do you foresee this helping the disabled community much, when the waiting period could be years depending where you fall on the list?
Unfortunately, this question invites, the cynic in me to come roaring to the top, because
easy, big boy.
Yeah, the challenge with affordable housing are many. We'll just say many, many, many.
Yeah.
However, the reality is it's way better to be on the list than not on the list. And it also then shows our friends in Washington, who unfortunately want to reduce federal support for affordable housing, and drastically reduce that, to say, look, we as you said, we have 5,000 people on the waiting list today, and we might add a few thousand more, and you're going to reduce funding? We have waiting lists. I don't know if you've seen the waiting list. We have friends, mutual friends that live at Heron Court. Did you know the waiting list at Heron Court is 7 to 10 years?
Oh my God.
And that's accessible, affordable, supportive housing. And it's 7 to 10 years. Well, what do you do for the next 7 years while you're waiting?
Yeah,
So,
stay at a Motel 6.
Motel 6, I got a tent, go to Florida where at least it's warmer, get an umbrella. I don't know, but again, we do have an affordable housing crisis. People with disabilities are part of it, and so we definitely have a lot of work there. However, people should still be signing up, realistically knowing that it's still a lot of years, but weird things happen, in the sense of good weird things could happen. You could move up a list. Who knows if the federal government were to wake up one day and say, oh, we decided to spend more. And sometimes there's categorical stuff. Right now, there's a lot of focus on veterans. A lot of veterans are people with disabilities, but you got to be a veteran first. So people move into the front of the line. There could be some supportive housing for people with disabilities. So it's always good to be on the list because it doesn't take much other than some time to fill out the application.
Yeah, I don't wish to go too far off this subject, but just for my viewers, I went through this process back in 1992 or so, and I was at what we called back then sojourners, which helped me move up the list, being I was soon to be displaced.
Yep.
And I guess my question is, comparing back then to today are two different things, right?
Yeah.
My gut tells me those on the waiting list today far exceed what was back then.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, your gut's right. The waiting lists are longer. The options can be less. It's just the Morton House downtown was subsidized housing for many, many years. The Morton House now has been turned into luxury condos.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, and all those.
I've seen that in the news.
Yeah, and all the people there, that they ended up finding housing. And so there was a lot of good support service that came together and people navigate. We helped a number of people find, again, affordable, accessible housing. However, the people that were there were spread out to other options. So across our community, the number of options was reduced. So anytime, a dwelling place or an ICCF or a Habitat or anybody is building a unit of housing, it's one off the list, or it might be 5 or 6 or 20 off the list. But, and again, every drop is a good drop, but it's still a lot more drops needed. Cynicism as well as hope. So, and a lot of work. I don't turn my cynicism into inaction. It's, okay, let's keep working on this.
Yeah, it's a work in progress continuously.
Yep. Yeah, and one of the works is we just have to pick up I do not joke that too many conversations collapse into what's affordable. What's affordable? Is that $1,000 a month in rent? $500? $2,000? What's affordable? It's just like, let's just pick a number and pretend that's the definition for 2 or 3 years and see how it impacts policy. Because we never really get to good policy solutions because we can't define what is affordable housing. So as a community, plenty of work to do. And there's good work happening. We just got to keep being part of it. And back to what groups can people be part of? If housing's your issue, find some housing groups. And how do you make sure that whatever new housing's being built, it is being built to current standards and so it's accessible, and then we can work about affordability.
Good point.
All right, thank you.
What do you suggest those do on the bottom of the list? I think we kind of covered this.
Yeah, other than keep working looking for other options and always checking in with the Housing Commission to see where they're at in the list, and do the best you can to keep hope.
Can they help themselves move up on the list if their conditions change at all, or?
That would be a good question for the Housing Commission, to ask if there's a way, if it's making sure that they inform the Housing Commission if there's a change in a person's health status or disability status. Chances are people aren't going to go out and become veterans. So that they, it's like, I want to go in the Army so I can get higher up the list. So at least the Army, provides housing. And so, but that being, so it's always checking out new options.
Yeah, or we could say at this point, anytime your status changes, or whatever, make sure you update your file.
Right, and to know, since this, will go out further than just Grand Rapids, Grand Rapids has a housing commission, and so does Kent County.
Right.
And so Kent County's housing commission is looking at Kentwood and Wyoming and Cedar Springs, so that there could be options outside of just the city of Grand Rapids.
So they're not so restricted.
Right. The challenge, of course, Wyoming and Kentwood's all right for GO Bus and public transportation, but if you live in Cedar Springs,
You're out of luck.
almost very, very few options, and they're much more limited than GO Bus, and much more expensive.
We did have county connection, but
Right.
that was short-lived.
Yeah, unfortunately, the 7 years went by way too fast, and the federal grant underneath it, the feds chose not to renew.
Also, they pulled the rug out from underneath them,
Right.
so to speak.
Yep, and so there's opportunities for countywide service that the next time I'm on your show we can talk about.
Okay.
Only if you want me back.
Sure, why not?
All right.
Depending on their given situation, will this help them move up the list? I think we covered that.
Yeah, again, it all depends. There is some magic within all of that people have to try to figure out.
Yeah, you just have to explore your opportunities.
Yes.
You just can't wait to move into that one complex,
Right.
or you're setting yourself up for false
Yep.
hope, I guess.
Yes.
What do you think is important to take from the priced out into 2014, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, to me, the biggest thing to look at within that study is how housing just keeps going up.
Yeah,
You know?
I think it's good to tell our viewers here that basically, on average, they're saying those on SSI are typically paying 100% plus
Right.
for housing,
Yep.
out of their income, which is primarily SSDI.
Yep.
Or I'm sorry,
SSI.
SSI.
Yeah.
As far as the study was concerned.
Absolutely. And that at least the statistic that holds pretty good is that if you spend 30% of your income on housing, then you should be spending less than 30%. We like to add, there was a study done that was housing plus transportation, so H plus T. If housing and transportation are 50%, then you have this burden. Because a lot of times, back to Cedar Springs has more affordable housing than a lot of neighborhoods of Grand Rapids.
Interesting.
But you can afford the housing in Cedar Springs, but it costs you way more to drive there or for public transportation. So when you see the H plus T together, Cedar Springs is way less affordable than the city of Grand Rapids, because Grand Rapids has, a decent level of public transportation. So you're
Right.
able to use public transportation. If it's a main line, it costs you, $50, or is it what, $47? Is that a monthly pass these days? I should know. But whatever a
Yeah.
monthly pass is, it costs you at least 50 or 55 cents a mile to drive a car. That includes everything, the cost of the car, insurance, maintenance, gas, and everything. Doesn't include your time, but 50 to 55 cents a mile to operate a vehicle. So if you drive even 100 miles a week, most people average $1,000 or 1,000 miles a month.
Right.
That's $550 on an average cost. Now, of course, some are higher, some are lower. If you've got an old beater and this month nothing broke down, it could be pretty cheap to operate it. But next month, when the
It's a
transmission
money
goes out,
pit.
yeah, it's like another $500 because the alternator goes or this goes. Or again, yeah, we all know that cars are money pits, as you said. So yeah, it's really looking at those costs together. And of course, then we don't calculate well enough the cost of the movement, that, you know, how much does it take to drive or take transit across town. So anyways, all that being said, a lot of opportunities, and knowing that we have a lot of work to do.
I wish we could give everybody a solution, but we don't have that yet.
Not yet, but as long as we keep working.
Yeah, the end is, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. And that light's not a train.
Michigan ranked number 7 on the table for number SSI recipients. Does this alarm you? I'll have that up for you guys later so you can see it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't alarm me. I mean, one of the good things about Michigan is we do have additional support services that other states don't have.
Oh, really?
So through the year, I mean, and a lot of the supports are just helping people apply. Still, I mean, a lot of people don't know they're eligible for different things. However, Michigan, we do a pretty good job helping people figure out what they're eligible for. So, it doesn't alarm me that we're that high up that list. I mean, what alarms me is that we're not wanting to work on those solutions that you talked about. I mean, the state of Michigan has an affordable housing trust fund to help leverage dollars to build affordable housing. There's $0 in that trust fund this year. So the legislature put no money into it. Even though they have the place to put the money, they don't have any money in it. You know, public transportation funding went up like 1%. Way better than going down 1%, but it only went up 1%. And so when the needs, you know, are way more than that, so we're just not, we're not looking at those numbers and saying, okay, how much should we be helping our family, friends, and neighbors? We just say, oh, it's a lot of people. Okay, let's do something about it.
Yeah, I guess that's the perspective I was looking at, is being we ranked rather high out of all 50 states.
Right.
So I was thinking, ooh, that means that many more people are in need, so therefore it's going to be that much more difficult for them to find affordable housing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's across the nation. It's an issue, and yeah, I mean,
So it don't really matter what state we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, again, and people, you might find one again, which is awesome for that one person. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard this story, and one of my coworkers likes to remind me of it. That a kid was down on the beach one day after a storm, and during the storm, you know, there was 1 million starfish that got washed up on shore, and the kid's throwing them back in the ocean one at a time. And somebody walks by and says, what are you doing that for? You're never going to get them all back in the ocean. What difference does it make? And he picks up another one and throws it in the ocean and said it made all the difference to that one. So one at a time. I mean, if somebody promises, I got the solution for everything, run for the door, because that's impossible. But if it's one at a time, a few at a time, how do we, more people, definitely the system can be made better. It needs to be made better. I got whole bureaucracies in Lansing by name and of suggestions for reform that we'll work on together. However, there are no magical silver bullets in this.
Oh, gee.
Sorry, having to break it to you.
Would you recommend those having housing issues with low income to learn more about TAC, being technical assistance, collaborative, incorporated, and CCD?
You know, anything people can learn, I mean, the answer is yes. You know, how best to either structure income, find additional income, how can you collaborate with landlords, You know, I mean, at the end of the day, landlords, be they for-profit or nonprofit, they're the ones that are controlling property, working with realtors. How can you find something that you might be able to afford? MSHDA, which is the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, MSHDA used to have some more assertive programs for home ownership, helping people with disabilities actually buy houses, so you could not only get something that could be affordable, and you could build wealth. Because,
wow, that sounds like a pipe dream almost.
well, sometimes it is, but at the same time, you know, one at a time. I mean, the more complex those supports are, then it really is going to be one at a time. However, they're out there. So any opportunity to learn, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep telling people your need, because it's like, well, you know, another funny story, people will say if you're in a second floor restaurant, people will say, well, you know, why put an elevator in? We never have people with wheelchairs up here, right? Right? It's like, well, you don't have an elevator. What do you expect, right? So it's, if you're not saying, hey, I want to come up there, people don't know. We forget that other people don't read minds. I don't read minds. Why do I expect you to read minds? You're going to know what I'm thinking and needing. We have to ask and tell. You know, all I want to do is come into your restaurant and spend my money. What's wrong with that picture, right?
Yeah,
all
that's
I want
a
to do
win-win.
yeah, all I want to do is rent a house from you. It's for rent. I got money. Let's go. Or do I have other supports that can pay for it? So yeah, absolutely a win-win.
Yeah, I think what's important is I'll probably tell my viewers a lot is, you know, be your own best advocate. It's the best you can do.
Did I ever tell you the story about putting a mirror on Mount Rushmore? That's why the mirror's on Mount Rushmore. You have to be. You have to be.
I think we came full circle, everyone.
That's my job.